Hello everyone, I'm Rich Lamont. Welcome back to the channel. This is your first time here, welcome. I want to thank you guys all for the huge welcome back. That's very nice to hear. I'm glad you guys are still finding the videos useful and that I can still create these for you. So with that, today's video we're going to be working on Kelsons and Namsen. It's a relatively simple pattern in comparison to all the other ones that I've done. It's a seal's fur body and then a pretty simple wing, no underwing, sides, or any of the crazy stuff. But I'm getting the pattern from George Kelson. So many of you may know George Kelson's The Salmon Fly. In my opinion, it's a must-have. You don't have to buy an original. You can get a reprint. You can find them on eBay. You can find them on probably at Kakibandu Books. There's a lot of stuff that you can find there, and that's where I got this one, the Essential Kelson. This is also another great book. It kind of compiles the most important points from a couple of Kelson's books. So there's a lot of patterns in there. There's photographs. There's some flies that were tied by Paul Little, Marvin Nolte, and Terry Griffiths, who actually wrote this book. So, two books that I think are must-haves in your library, at least Kelson's The Salmon Fly. Such a great book, so many patterns, and there's so much to learn in there about techniques and how he dressed flies back in his era. So with that, we're going to turn right around here, get to the vise, and start on the Namsen. Enjoy. Okay, welcome back to the vise. Now the hook I'm using today is a B&R hook by Byron Bjork. Here's his contact info. This is a Harrison Bartley 3.0. So as in the recipe, this can be tied anywhere from a 3.0 up to like a 7.0. But I wanted to keep this one kind of in the smaller end of the range. Especially since like a 3.0 to 4.0 is probably the best size for learning and practicing. So I figured that's what we'd go with. Now as you can see here, I've already got a little bit of an underbody on there. And this time around I'm actually using real silk for the eye. So I do have it gutted all the way back to here. The recipe calls for silver twist and yellow seal's fur for the tag. So I do not have Vivus silver twist, so I'm going to use Unifrench silver twist. I got this one from feathersmc.com. Alright, so when tying in your tip and tag material, you want the butt end of the tinsel to go right up against that floss, or excuse me, right up against the butt end of that eye. And what this will do is help kind of smooth out the transition between the gut back here and the rest. Now the twist is a little on the thick side, so you don't need a whole lot of it. I'm only going to do 2 turns of it. And it does burnish out flat as well, which is kind of nice. And now tying this off, I'm going to do the same thing in reverse. I'm going to tie it off going all the way back up to that butt end of the silk gut. Now that helps ensure that you have a smooth transition also between your tip and the rest of the tag, should you have a silk tag, which most are. This one is going to be seal's fur. But to blend that body together, cut it off right at that gut eye. And then wrap back. I'm just using some sunburst yellow seal's fur. Some people use wax when they're dubbing this. Typically I don't, just because I don't know, I find it easier to dub without the wax. Though wax is recommended, especially when you're learning. You want this to be somewhat of a tight wrap. Now, once we get a little bit farther ahead, we can trim this back just a little bit so it's not so fuzzy. And then there's a butt of black ostrich herl. So we'll just go ahead and select a piece from here. Most of the time, the less fuzz you have on the ostrich herl, the better. The finer it is you want. But this being seal's fur, which is already a bit on the fuzzy side, I'm choosing a little bit of a thicker, fuzzier ostrich herl. Almost forgot the tail. Don't want to do that. Okay, so for the tail, I'm going to tie in 2 pieces. So I've chosen 2 pieces of golden pheasant crest. We'll tie the longer one on first. If you look at the angle of it is a little bit steep. I don't want it to be up so high. So we'll use our thumb and just kind of splay it out and get it to lay back a little bit more. Hold on. Let me try these. Might be a little better. Yeah, I think I like this one a little better. Okay, so this one's a different tail, a different crest altogether. But it's not so steep and it'll be easier to tie in. So we'll start with this one. We'll strip away this fuzzy part here. And then we're going to trim the rest. And trimming the rest is going to leave these tiny little pieces, these barbs, and that'll help your thread grip the tail better, so that way the tail doesn't pitch and roll and cause too many issues. But now if you look here, that seal's fur is going to push that right up. So what we want to do Let's help kind of push that seal fur down a bit. And we're going to build this up just a little. And that's going to kind of give us a little platform to lay the tail on. I'm also going to use my thumbnail right at the tie-in point and kink the rackets just a little bit, and that'll help keep it kind of pointed back and flat. That's one. I don't know if we need a second, but let's take a look at a couple options just to see what it looks like. Kind of like that, actually, having a second one on there. Let's give it a shot and see what it looks like. Worst case, we take it off. So in this one I did the same thing. I just stripped the fuzz part, trim the rest, and then kink the rackets just a little. Okay, so I do like this tail. I think I'm going to leave it that way. It's a little longer than I would normally have wanted, but the wing is going to end kind of just shy of the tail, and there's no topping, so I don't have to worry about them meeting or anything like that. I think I'm going to leave it like this. It's going to have a nice look to it. So next we'll put in the butt. Now, I've seen this without a butt, and it actually does look relatively good. But I'm going to stick with the original pattern as written. So tie it in with the racket side down or the stem side down and the fuzzier side up. Then you'll be able to pull it straight towards you, forward, and then up. And that should orient it so that way the fuzzy side is towards the back of the fly, leaving you with nice even wrap. Keep those pieces slightly overlapped. Tie that off. You can also use a pair of hackle pliers to hold on to it. It does get a little tricky, and ostrich can be quite delicate. Alright, next is the tinsel. So the ribbing is, I'm using medium oval tinsel for this, and that is by Vivis. You guys know I love my Vivis products. I much prefer them. I love their tinsels and their threads. So now normally I would tell you to strip off one of the ends And that way when you're tying it in, it doesn't leave a huge lump. But this is going to be a seals for a body, so the only thing you have to really worry about is the positioning of it. So we'll just tie that in at the, I don't know, about 5:30 position, right on the back quartering away side there. And now, according to the Kelson, it's equally divided sections of red, orange, dark blue, and claret, with hackle in the dark blue and claret. So for red orange, I don't have a red orange per se, but I have an orange and a red. So let's try that. I don't know how mixing the two is going to look. Never really actually done that. Let's try to blend the two together and see. It's not terrible. Seems to be more red than orange, but that's okay. We're having fun there, right? That's all it's about. So all I did was take the two colors, and I'm just kind of like shuffling a deck of cards in a way. Just going through and rolling it around and mixing it up. When you're dubbing, make sure that you get it all the way around the thread. You don't want it on one side. So we'll do the dark blue next. When you're looking at the ingredients list, the recipe, you generally want to go in the order that it's listed. Now for the blue, we're going to have a hackle tied into it. So it says dark blue, but I've got a royal blue that I'm using. So I guess we can call this a Namsen variant in a way. I know some don't like that word, but it is what it is. So that's the blue seal's fur, and this is the blue hackle. I'm just using strung saddle hackle. So we're going to tie this in. We'll tie the hackle in first. Let's make sure it's going to be right at the second turn of, or on the turn of tinsel. Okay. You want it on the turn of tinsel because you want the hackle to actually follow the rear edge of the tinsel. So we're going to strip back and find that point, and also strip away the fuzz at the base of the feather. We're not going to use the whole feather, only through the blue section, so it's only going to be a turn or two. And I like to tie it so that way it is concave side down with the face of the feather facing up. And when you wrap it, you can pull it all back, front facing forward. And then we'll go ahead with the blue seal's fur. I'm going to add a little bit more on the blue because this blue is going to get picked out a little bit. Always twist in the same direction. I always twist counterclockwise, it's just how I've done it. It doesn't matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise. Just always pick the same direction. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull the tinsel forward first. Because we'll need to tie off this blue hackle before we move on to claret. Trying to get the spacing even. And now we'll bring the hackle forward. I'm going to palmer that backward. I'm actually not a fan of that length. I don't like that feather. So we're going to back up. And we're going to replace that feather with something better. think that might have actually been a neck feather that I got confused, that I got mixed into the pile. This is what I want. This is better. Let's see what the length is like first. That's a little better. Okay. A little more blue now. Okay, now we'll do tinsel and then hackle. And fold those fibers back. Tuck that behind that tinsel like so. And then as it's tucked behind, pull it back just a bit. And then we'll tie that off right there. Okay. And now for the claret, which I'm using more of a red claret. And tuck that right in behind that tinsel. Oh man. I must be somewhat distracted today. I forgot the hackle. So I've got the feather. And what we're going to do is find the length on this hackle feather that matches the blue. And that's where we're going to start. We'll start right about there. And to do that, I just clipped away the parts on the side and the tip. And just like we did with the blue, we'll tie this in on the top. Just a shade more. Always want to leave room for the throat, though. Okay. Then we'll take the tinsel and continue on with it. I'm going to keep that angle and spacing even. That's what one turn of this looks like here. I just don't want it to be too long. Okay, I like that. Looks good. Now the throat is galena. So galena is, it's basically guinea hen, but it's the finer speckled guinea hen. So this is going to be our throat. And we want that to be just as long, if not a shade longer than that claret. So once you find a guinea hen feather that you like, I'll tie it in the exact same way as before. Doesn't have to be on top, but easy place to tie it in. And then we'll just wrap that and pull it back as we go. You could fold your hackle beforehand and wrap it that way. I just prefer to palmer it and wrap it back as I go. Let me have a look here. I like that. Alright, now let's head over to the desk and I'll show you how to put the wing together real quick for this. Alright, so the wing on the Namsen, if you look back at the recipe, is mainly golden pheasant and Cory bustard. It does say galena, but we're going to add that in later as kind of a side. So what we're going to do is, this is about a 3/0 hook, so I'm going to choose a little bit larger of fibers, just to make sure that we get that nice wing out of it. Take that. I didn't count how many fibers. I do have a box for extras, but let's see what we can come up with for a wing first, size-wise. And one thing I want to show you, if you look at this golden pheasant feather, you see how it's twisted? This feather probably should get steamed, but hopefully we can get that Cory in there to kind of mix in and stiffen it up just a little bit. So now the recipe calls for it in strands, so it could technically be considered like a mixed wing. So maybe, it doesn't say mixed in the recipe, but I think that's what I'm going to try to go for, is a nice thick mixed wing. So, usually I separate it out into individual strands, but I'm going to go to 2 and 3. So this will be more like a mixed married wing. Maybe I'll brush it out right after I put it on the fly. Making sure to line up all those tips. Make sure you have a nice angle right there. I actually kind of like that. I wonder what brushing it out would make it look like. I think it's a little bit thick for a 3-0, so I might thin it out a little bit as far as the golden pheasant goes here. Take a little bit off the top. A little off the bottom. Yeah, I kind of like that. That actually looks pretty good. I'm going to keep that. I don't know if I'll brush it out or not, but you see the angle at the tip right here. You can change that just a little bit. So you want to very gently hold it with these 2 fingers, and then take this hand. Make sure you have all of it in your fingers, and then rotate so you're pulling the top fibers back. And then alternate your fingers to set it. There, now you have less of an angle. All right, I'll do the other wing, and I'll see you over at the vise. Okay, so we're going to try to part this galena just a bit. And that's just to allow the wing to sit there. We're also going to build up just a little bit right here. And I am going to use a little bit of wax just to be able to build that up and not let it slip too much. Now, unlike building the head, I'm not heating it up to the point of melting it. I just want to soften it a little bit. All right. Now these wings can be a little bit tricky just because of the amount of golden pheasant in them. Golden pheasant being somewhat of a tricky material. Alright, so here's the wing. And what we want to do, we want the wing to almost reach the tail, but you want to have it curved a little bit. So when you're tying it in, see how it's kind of got that bend to it? You want to kind of have that, bend. I'm going to set that right up on top here. And then right it by the tie-in point, hold these fingers firm and take these fingers and start to kind of grab them here and bend up, but don't let the other ones pull. And you see what that's doing? How it's bending that. It's putting almost a crease right in there. That kind of helps the wing a little bit. Then you do one loop over and let it hang. And then use your right hand to help the feathers and the threads settle. Do not move these. Pinch these tight. And you want to let that settle down. And you'll pull a little tight. One wrap. Pull a little tighter. Another wrap. Third. Now I kind of like that, except for one thing. Right here. That right there is a fold. We don't want that. You want it to collapse down almost like an accordion. You don't want it to fold. It's still better. Pretty much what's causing that is the neck, the throat. Backside looks okay. So what we're going to do is take that off. I'm going to fix the wing a little bit. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do our best to kind of get these barbules off to the side a little bit. And I'm going to wrap backwards just a little. And go right over those throat hackles. And see what that did there was it helped pinch everything down a little more. Keeps that throat in more of a more directed downward. Typically when you're tying like a fishing fly, you're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to, it's called trapping your hackles. And you don't want to trap your hackles on a fishing fly. those hackles will splay out, and that'll actually create a lot more movement in the water. But for presentation purposes, for a frame or something like that, that can give you a decent look. But now we're going to untrap them and see how they stay that way. So now I just want to take a look at each one of the wings again. Once you try to tie down married wing with golden pheasant, if you undo it, a lot of times you'll find that some of the fibers have become unmarried. Alright, with the wings rebuilt, let's give this another shot. That's a little better. Actually, meeting the tail isn't bad. It doesn't look that bad at all. It was a little bit of an odd pattern with, no underwing. But, yeah, I like that. So what we're going to do now is we'll put a little bit of clear Salire on that. Just kind of get that all set. Once it's set, we'll go ahead and put on the two guinea sides, and then we can go ahead and button it up and put the head on. Alright, that's just about well and dry now. So the last remaining piece is the guinea fowl, or galena for the sides. So I've got some tail from the guinea hen. Because if you notice the tail on the guinea hen, the tips are much more defined. Whereas most of the other guinea feathers, especially like even right above the tail, they thin out. So using, these, yeah, I suppose you could. Actually, I want to see what that looks like. Even though the feathers kind of thin out a little bit towards the tip, they might still look quite nice because they are longer. And this feather is more of a pre-tail, not necessarily a tail. You know what, everybody? I think I kind of like that better. I might just stick with that. Now I feel like this wing is a little on the long side. I didn't intend for it to go all the way to the tail. But how it settled into where I was tying it in, it kind of went that way. I think I am going to leave it though. I do kind of like the look of it. I mean, we're talking a millimeter or two. So yeah, we're going to stay with that. We'll do a little bit more Salire to keep those galena sides on. And then we'll put the head on. And this way I'll be done. Can make a few adjustments while we're kind of waiting. Pick out some of the seal's fur here. You only want to pick out the blue and the claret. You don't want to pick out the orange. Maybe just a shade of the orange, just to make it blend a little bit better, but not too much of it. Now, a guinea throat is relatively similar in consistency and texture, and it's consistent with like a Cory hackle. Sorry about that. So you can take it, same thing with Jay really, you take it and you can twist it a little bit down here, like this, roll it in your fingers, and that'll help keep it down and oriented. And you can see a little bit of the claret hackle in there, and you can see the claret seal's fur, and then without clipping any of the hackle, trim away some of this other stuff that's in the way. And I do think doing one of these wings and brushing it out would probably look really, really good. But I'm going to leave this one as is, as I really do kind of like the look of this, even though it's a little on the long side for the wing. Alright, I'm going to let that set up and then we'll finish up the head. Okay, now that that is set up, I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. First we'll use a brand new razor blade. And this is where it's time to be a little bit careful about how you do things with the head. So now is where I'm going to heat up some wax and use that to create the head. But first I'm going to pinch here, get some thread out there. I want to make sure that that's nice and tight on there. We don't need a lot of wax on there. Okay, now that that is set up, I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. First we'll use a brand new razor blade. And this is where it's time to be a little bit careful about how you do things with the head. So now is where I'm going to heat up some wax and use that to create the head. But first I'm going to pinch here, get some thread out there. I want to make sure that that's nice and tight on there. We don't need a lot of wax on there. Alright, so before we get to the head, one more component, and that is the horns. I'm going to take the macaw, the blue and gold macaw. I don't want them over the wings, but I don't want them too short. I don't want them too long either. I think I kind of like that. There we go. I'm just lengthening them there a little bit. There we go. That's how I want them to sit, just like that. There we are. Okay. So this is a wool head, by the way. I know it's in the recipe, but I didn't explain that earlier. So what I'm going to do is add a little wax to this. Okay. I'm not going to put a lot of wax on the thread, but enough. Enough to pretty much make the shape of the head. That's going to hold those in place as well. And this is just melting that wax that I put on there. I wouldn't exactly say this is the conventional way. It's one of the ways that I learned, and I happen to really like using the wax for the head. So that bit of wax should hold everything in place just enough. And there should be enough solder to hold the wing together. And when we set it. And now for the wool. I want to use Berlin wool. So I got this at feathersmc.com. I think it's like 15 bucks and you get the whole pack. All these different colors for 15 bucks. It's really a really good deal. So each color comes on cards like this, and as you can see, there's a lot on that card. So we don't need much of it. This here will be enough to probably do several heads. But as you can see, it's a multi-strand. So you want to untwist it and just pull out of one of those strands. And now you're going to take that strand, and in your fingers you're going to pull it apart little by little and make it into almost like dubbing. Okay. I'll start with that. And then we're going to take this and we'll dub it right onto the thread. Very, very lightly. When you start wrapping it, you do one wrap around the front. See if I can shorten these macaw a little bit. Just a little at a time when you're dubbing it. You don't want it too thick. You don't want a lot on there. And you always work from the front and back when you're doing a wool head. And that's it. So now we'll put a little bit of, I'm going to put some Sally Hansen's on there. Hard as nails. It's kind of like a fingernail polish, fingernail straightener. And just put a little bit on the thread. And then do a half hitch. You want that half hitch to line up behind the wool head. That's a lot. And you can go ahead and cut it. And there you have it. My version of the Namsen from Kelson. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please think about subscribing. I have a lot of new videos coming up. This whole year I've got planned out with a whole bunch of flies from Kelson and even some from Major John Traherne. So, you know, it's going to be a good year. I'll have some giveaways coming up. I'm not quite geared up for it yet, but you can bet I'll have some coming. And like I said, I always accept requests. So if you have a fly you'd like to see, any kind of a material review that you'd like to see, please let me know. Leave it in the comments, and I'll be happy to get to it. Other than that, I hope you folks have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.